about Ted approaching him here and saying, you need to do something like Thriller, and Prince almost punched him.
Yeah.
Well, I think Prince showed up in Ted's office. There was like a secret entrance to Ted's office at Warner Brothers.
Oh, yeah, because
I think Prince was over there. Ted said he used to go and listen to music or do something in his office when Ted wasn't there. But then one day he walked in and Prince was there. And so as far as I recall in the book, there was some talk about, if you really want to get to your Thriller, like your big thing, you probably need a producer. Why don't you call Quincy? And he's, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do myself. So.
Wow.
Well, and that's the thing too that I always thought was amazing. He had nobody to bounce that off of. He didn't collaborate with musicians. It wasn't like you sat down and
Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah. I mean, he would bring people in that would compliment him and could read what he wanted, but it's not like he ever sat down and collaborated with anybody. And I think that's the way he was most comfortable because he had trouble communicating.
But it's interesting because the bands that he put together were really amazing. They all worked very well as a unit. They were clearly, their job was to watch him at all times and be ready to respond to whatever he was going to do. But you'd have to have some way of communicating that.
I'm sure communicated at practice.
Yeah.
But everybody was pretty like me. They were all kind of like, waiting for the next thing. Because that's just kind of, in fact, later when I saw him, when he did 20 days for $20 at the Forum to try to save the Forum.
I didn't see it, but I heard, yeah.
Yeah. And I had tried, because my kids would come in and I had the records on the wall, and my son would look up and say, did you really work with that guy? And I said, yeah, for 5 years. And he was like, I was a mom. That didn't translate to them. Yeah. So I really wanted them to see Prince and, see who he was. And I would try to look at a show, and they were like $1,300 a ticket. It's like,
oh, jeez.
Not even would I go see that, let alone take 2 kids. So when they did 20 nights for $20 at the Forum, I bought 4 tickets right away, and they took 2 friends. So it took my 2 kids and 2 friends, and then I got a little better tickets.
Good for you.
A little closer down. And I was glad to see that he started collaborating with equally talented musicians instead of, and I'm not saying that they weren't talented, but they were green, and most of them were picked for their looks, kind of thing. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. I mean, he was young. He was 20 years old, and
it was the
everything.
MTV era where it was you listened to music with your eyes.
Yeah, and all of his, all the girls were pretty. Everybody was pretty. And these people weren't perfect, but they were really talented musicians. And I was glad to see that matured in him, because I thought his talent could be enhanced by equally as talented musician. That he wasn't always leading it, he wasn't always driving everything, that he could actually collaborate with somebody. He was so talented.
Did he seem like he was having fun, though, at times? Yeah, I mean, but even in the studio, was
by himself, yes.
Yeah.
He loved it. He just loved it.
So, but he would be in a good mood and be like, today's a great day, check this out. He would share things with you like that sometimes, or?
No.
No.
But you could tell that he was pleased with the song, or, like the, ain't nobody can believe I do this, punching out the bass.
Yeah.
You could tell that he was in a good mood. If he talked, he was in a good mood.
Wow.
I mean, he didn't talk. Literally, he would come in, make a cup of coffee, and start on a machine. He didn't say good morning. He didn't say anything. And you were ready. He might grunt, he might, like
Notoriously, he liked a lot of sugar, right? So when you say coffee, was it mostly coffee?
It was mostly sugar. It was a little cup, about 2/3 full of white sugar cubes with coffee poured on top and cremora. And that's what he ran on until I was starving to death and had to eat something. I saw Susan Rogers. We did a AES show in New York. and they wanted us to talk on a panel. They called us the OGs, the original goddesses that worked with Prince. And she told me, she said, one of the first things you told me when I was taking over for you is coffee loses about a third of its caffeine right after it's brewed. So if you want to go home, don't make him a fresh pot of coffee. That was my advice to her.
Yeah.
And then somebody said that they used to, he'd say, okay, make me a cup of tea. I guess he stopped drinking coffee and started drinking tea. So they would go at Paisley Park, they would go and pull the tag off of the decaf and stick a regular calf and staple it on. And so they give him decaf to try to get him to get sleepy and go home.
Wow.
Straight up
problem there.
chamomile. Yeah.
Right.
Would he eat ever?
Yeah, and he accused me of trying to make him sleepy so he'd go home. Got really mad at me. You're just trying to make me sleepy and go home. It's like, no, can I eat?
We need food to survive.
Yeah, he didn't eat, and he was terrified of getting fat.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Huh. Because he had some overweight people in his family, I guess, and he just was terrified. And he was a little tiny thing,
I know.
A little tiny thing.
Little guy.
In
With
fact,
platforms.
I know. 6-inch heels.
Yeah.
After the Forum concert that I told him I wouldn't go unless I had a limo and a backstage pass. That was sitting next to Madonna. He came back to the studio. I mean, who does that? You go to a concert.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, he came back to the studio. And he had, on stage, he had a black lace unlined suit on with a G-string.
With a G-string.
Yeah, so it was see-through. Everything was see-through except for just the very front part. And I remember Susan said, I kind of don't want to see the hair on my boss's ass. And I said, I know. That's what he wore to the studio, was that black lace suit.
We came in wearing that at midnight.
Did he actually do any work?
Wow.
I can't remember. Probably diddled around. It was more of what I'm sure not all the time, but more of like, I can get all these people to go into the studio and I can dick around for 2 hours and then go home, So, yeah.
Power.
Yeah, you didn't get the night off.
Do you have a key here? Sorry, go ahead.
No,
You'd have to let him in, right?
Yeah.
He probably had the room
He
block
had
booked.
it 24. Yeah, 24.
And, he was paying for it. And he just, he shows when he shows.
And the security guard would have let him in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah, and I had to be here too. He never came without me, but
Yeah.
I remember one time he got stopped. It was because when I first knew him, he didn't have a car. He borrowed his manager's car when he was here.
Oh.
And so then, then after Purple Rain, he started bringing the motorcycle, or 1999, he started bringing the motorcycle, and he had a 750 BMW painted purple. At first it was black. So he would have it trucked out here. And he left one time, he left the studio, and he got stopped because he had his windows blacked out. Which you can't,
tinted.
Yeah,
Right.
really tinted on the driver and passenger side. And the cops stopped him, and they said, where are you coming from? And he said, I'm coming from the studio. And they said, what studio? And he told them, I think it was just right around here. And he told me the story the next day. They said, oh, do you sing country? And Prince said, oh, have you seen Willie Nelson? I wouldn't touch country. So he gave him a little lip.
So
and
they
let
didn't
him
know
go.
who he was.
No.
That would have been like
Nobody knew
controversy then.
Yeah. No, it was because he had a car. So it was after 1999.
Okay. The
But
black BMW.
cops aren't gonna know who he is.
Yeah. You, Susan Rogers, Sylvia Massey, Lisa Chamblay, all these great female engineers, worked with him in all these different periods of his life. He was still somewhat obscure in Dirty Mind, and when he came in here before Controversy, or the ending of Controversy. What was so special, do you think, about the time that you spent with him, as opposed to the Paisley Park, or would you have rather been at the Paisley Park kind of sessions?
No. And the reason is, Susan Rogers pointed this out, and it made a lot of sense. He was a different person in each era. Like with me, he was young and hungry and green. With Susan, he was that mega rock star. With Sylvia, he was that seasoned mega rock star, which I'm glad I didn't see. And then with Lisa, life had beat him up. And he was So Susan pointed out that Lisa and I got him when he was more human. And I thought, yeah, that's really true. Because, he was young and still hungry and coming up. And then, you realize life beats you up and can't stay up there forever. And I think that's, and I think his drive to be a star was really powerful. And then, once you get there, you're just there. You're still the same person. You just have a lot more money and you still have the same problems. So I think that, life beat him up pretty badly.
Do you feel that if you had been with a different artist for 5 or 6 years that you would have continued on at Sunset or in recording?
That's tough because he showed me, it was...
Everyone lasted about 5 years with him, though.
Yeah, but the thing about the 80s, it was excess. Do you remember they used to spend a week on a fucking snare sound? It's like, give me a break. And I literally had 5 minutes to get a drum sound. He taught me another side, that it doesn't matter, that little picky cocained out shit doesn't matter. You get it. If it's a good song, you get it down, it's a good song. That's kind of what I realized. We did a song all in one day. Some of them were huge hits. So that spending, 2 weeks on a snare sound really didn't matter. And it was that time of excess, the budgets were huge. It was getting ridiculous.
Yeah, there was no end to it.
There was no end to it.
Wide open.
Yeah, and just hours and hours and weeks and months. It got grueling and boring, you just lived in this dark hole here. It was just really, it really wasn't a life. Do you remember there was a magazine commercial or a magazine advertisement in one of our magazines, Mix Magazine or something? It's this guy sitting at the console with his head down and cigarettes overflowing and tape all over and, 2 cups of dried out coffee. And he said, studio's so glamorous. And that's kind of what it was,
That's right.
Yeah. It wasn't a glamorous place. It was work. It was
so
better
many
than some work, but...
had a hard time having an outside life.
Yeah.
A relationship, a wife, or anything.
It could be glamorous. It could be exciting. And, I think it really depends on the day and the artist and stuff, too, because you must have lots of great memories of certain sessions where you got to see something, for example, like when the Beatles did that orchestral session and the first time they would have heard the playback of, A Day in the Life.
Right.
Things like that, moments like that happen in studios. And lots of stuff like that happened here at Sunset Sound, from the Beach Boys to whatever, like really classic moments.
And you can hear that in the music. I can hear that excitement in the music, but not all sessions are like that.
True.
And I've seen, when you made a monitor mix and took it home that night, and then we played Beat the Demo because that was the mix because it was the feeling of it that night. So there was the magic of music. They just got fewer and fewer the farther and farther you got into it. And it could have been me, it could have been the time. I got sick of the manufactured music and how hard you would work on something and they would shelve it. That was really discouraging.
Wouldn't come out, yeah.
Yeah, it was just like, we don't hear a hit. It's like... Ugh.
Or the A&R got changed.
Yeah. And I remember Anderle said it used to be like you'd have a hit record and, you'd have a couple that weren't so great, but the couple of songs were good. And then you'd have another hit record that the record company stayed with the artist. There was a loyalty it was business. You didn't have a hit, you were gone, Yeah. So it became a business and I liked it when it was run by artists.